Hello, hello. Bear with me 1 second here. I had to do this one because this is really hilarious. These electric cars, they are not stonks. Just updating something here. Just bear with me. All right, folks. Welcome. Keste Couch 2025. We're going live. So yeah, this EV issue, it's pretty insane. Electric vehicles are not doing so hot, as they say. We're gonna get into it. Give me 5 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble. Yeah, these EVs are a mess. What a mess. What is happening here? What is that? All right, let's get into it. So this is a video. Real reasons why nobody wants electric cars. Let's go.
A few years ago, EVs looked like they were going to be the way of the future. They were fast, powerful cars that could also help save the planet. Yet media headlines in 2024 and 2025 have been screaming about a slumping EV industry, with CNBC even announcing EV euphoria is dead. In 2023, Ford postponed $12 billion of their planned EV production.
You guys comment down below when this video is uploaded. Y'all for EV cars or what? What's up? Is this something people really want, or I don't know.
GM expected to produce between 200,000 to 250,000 EVs in 2024, down from the initial estimate of 400,000. And Volkswagen canceled the development of a $2 billion EV factory in Germany. So what happened? How did a once promising market end up going so wrong? The answers may surprise you and disprove a lot of the popular myths about electric vehicles. On today's episode of the Infographic Show, we're revealing the real reason why EV cars are on the decline. Another 15 years with your beloved car?
EV cars get trolled so hard. Online recently, I just see, there's so many memes now. People are making tons of content mocking EVs. I remember when EVs were like such a sacred cow. You couldn't say anything against them or you'd be shunned into exile.
And you decide it's time for an upgrade. You want something modern, packed with cutting-edge tech. But hey, why not make it good for the environment too? So you head to your nearest car dealer to buy an electric vehicle. The salesman greets you and takes you around the showroom. He rattles off about how great the newest line of EVs are, how much money you'll
Ooh, he doesn't look very convinced. Classic car salesman.
Save on gas, and how helpful your new car choice will be for the environment. You smile and you nod along as you take a closer look at the price, and it starts at $45,000. For a car, your stomach drops.
She mad. You
start doing the mental math. Maybe it's time to check how much kidneys go for on the dark web. You quickly interrupt the salesman and you
Ooh, that's pretty racist. What are they trying to imply on this young black lady?
Explain that actually you're after a more budget-friendly car. The salesman pauses and explains, this is their most budget-friendly car. Shocked, you start looking around the showroom at other options. You spot another model with a base price of $80,000, maybe a truck instead, but the truck starts at $80,000 as well. Next to it's an SUV with a starting price of $85,000, and that's without any bells and whistles that you'd like to add on.
You could buy like a brand new CLS practically, AMG. Well, not for 85, not AMG, but you get the point.
Are you supposed to afford any of this? Well, that's the first problem with the EV market today. The first electric vehicles that were introduced were targeted to luxury consumers, as most new car tech is. As the technology is still being refined and developed, producing an EV is still more expensive than producing a gas-powered car. This is mostly because of the lithium-ion battery that powers them, which often amounts to 78% of the car's total price. According to Kelley Blue Book in June 2024, the average new electric vehicle costs $56,000, while the
and also it's extremely racist. because the cobalt needed to construct these lithium batteries. There's a lot of negative press around that. A lot of negative press, guys.
Average new gas-powered vehicle costs $49,000. While $7,000 might not seem like a huge difference, it's still enough to make most buyers think twice before committing to an EV. Unfortunately for electric vehicles, the price gap is most noticeable in the compact SUV category, which happens to be one of the most popular categories in the US market. According to Edmunds.com, the average electric
Well, I mean, if it's electric, you wouldn't really need a compact, would you? You get a giant bus at that point.
compact SUV costs $53,048, while a gas-powered version sits at just $35,722, a 58.5% price difference. With inflation driving up costs across the board, consumers are watching their wallets more carefully than ever. And for most, the extra cost of an EV simply isn't worth it. Many manufacturers, as well as auto experts, make the argument that over time, EVs end up paying for themselves because of the lower fueling and maintenance costs. After all, EVs don't need oil change.
Classic marketing. It pays for itself.
Just spark plug replacements or checks on the exhaust system, mainly because they don't have any of those things.
It makes you money while you sleep. You could mine Bitcoin on your EV.
Battery and the motor also require way less maintenance than a gas-powered car would require. Car and Driver magazine put this to the test by comparing two popular models, the Hyundai Kona versus the Hyundai Kona Electric, and the Ford F-150 versus the Ford F-150 Lightning. They analyzed both initial purchase prices and operating costs over the first 3 years of ownership to see if the EVs truly offer long-term savings. They found that over the period of 3 years, the Hyundai Kona cost almost $19,400 in total terms of fueling, maintenance, and depreciation costs. Meanwhile, the electric version cost $21,400, making the electric option more expensive. However, the Ford F-150 costs total $26,200, while the electric version only costs $23,800. That being said, neither of those numbers take into account one of the main reasons people started buying up EVs in the first place: the tax credit.
Cybertruck, go burr.
And to incentivize electric vehicle sales. With the credit calculated into the cost of the cars, it's clear that the EVs are winners in terms of lower cost. But what happens if the tax credits goes away? Well, that brings us to our next problem.
I know in terms of consumption, I know quite a few people with EVs. I know for consumption, it's definitely not even comparable. The EVs smoke gas-powered cars in terms of consumption, like consumption price, like how much it'll cost you to charge one on your electrical bill versus fueling up a gas car. So that's definitely one of the main benefits.
Recovering from the sticker shock, the salesman seizes the moment. He leans in with a reassuring smile and says that you can always use the tax credit the U.S. government offers to bring the cost down. It's $7,500 for an eligible new model, the salesman responds, and you can even get $4,000 for eligible used models now. With that much money back, you could probably afford the least expensive car on the lot. Things are starting to look up, the salesman continues, but you should purchase soon because the tax credit may not be around for that much longer if you're eligible for it. How are you supposed to know if a car actually qualifies? And why could waiting just a month mean you end up with no tax credit at all? This brings us to one of the biggest issues causing the EV market to slow today: a hazy political future of EVs. Every time a new party comes to power, any tax credits or incentives for electric vehicles might be in danger. Administrations can sign executive orders reversing previous targets for.
This is the thing. Like, if it was such a positive thing, if it was like across the board, unanimously accepted as a positive thing, you wouldn't see this partisan adherence like you do. Like, one party will be all in, and then people elect another government, and it's just like they abandon these programs. It's interesting.
Electric vehicle sales and repeal EV tax credits. Since the EV market is still in its early stages, prices remain higher than gas-powered vehicles, and not just because of the expensive batteries. A huge portion of the cost comes from ongoing research and development as automakers continue to refine and improve the relatively new technology. Until those costs balance out, EVs will likely stay more expensive than their gas-powered counterparts for at least a few more years. If the tax credit disappears, EVs will become less competitive in the US auto market, affecting both how much manufacturers want to produce them and how likely consumers are to buy them. But there are reasons to be optimistic. Market research firm Gartner says that battery EVs and their manufacturing.
Oh, this is really funny. I'll show you guys this. This is freaking hilarious, folks. She dead. We have no pulse. Clear. Clear. Plug it into the Mitsubishi EV. Clear. Nothing. That's just an idea of the content people are making. That's freaking funny. EVs are taking an L.
to produce than an internal combustion engine of similar type by 2027. But in the meantime, the possibility of tax credits and other financial incentives disappearing makes people wary of buying EVs. And that's not just a US-only phenomenon. Europe and Australia have also been pulling back on incentives as well. Australian states like Victoria, New South Wales, and South Australia ended their $3,000 rebates in 2023 and 2024. In perhaps not a coincidence, in April 2024, electric vehicle sales dropped for the first time in 2 years. But you also have to qualify for the tax credits in the first place. In the US, the manufacturer's suggested retail price, MSRP, of the EV you're buying has to be under certain limits. $80,000 for SUVs and larger vehicles, $55,000 for sedans. It also has to be assembled in North America with a battery that is at least 50% assembled in North America. The consumers will also have to meet certain income requirements, less than $300,000 in adjusted gross income per household. All of this isn't common knowledge yet, since EVs
Damn, read the fine print. A lot of fine print.
are new, and the instability of potential credits makes consumers hesitant to invest in one. Not to mention, where a consumer lives can also make a big difference for 2 reasons. Back to the car dealership, where you're deciding that you might as well get an EV, but soon, so you can take advantage of the tax credit while it's still around. The salesman then asks if you live in the area, California, or are you planning to move soon?
You live in San Diego?
He lets you know that California is actually one of the most EV-friendly places to live. You say you might actually be moving back to Mississippi soon. The salesman pauses, his smile disappearing as he watches his commission check vanish into thin air.
I'm moving back to Kansas.
Maybe an EV isn't such a good idea after all, he says. And that is one of the other major issues slowing down EV adoption. Where you live can make all the difference, and not just because of infrastructure.
Ooh, she in the wrong neighborhood. Hope there aren't any,
And available chargers, there can be a lot of hidden costs. Mississippi, for example, is rated the least EV-friendly place in the US, while California, unsurprisingly, is rated the most. The difference between the two in EV infrastructure is huge.
There's no EV in Mississippi.
California has almost 51,500 chargers in total. Mississippi has 419. And depending on where in the state you find yourself, there might not be a charger near you at all. Not that you'll need one as often as you think, but we'll get back to that later. In the meantime, where you live also affects how much it costs to charge up your EV. US residents pay very different amounts for electricity depending on where in the country they are, and how greedy their local energy monopoly is. In 2020, for example, Louisiana residents paid an average of 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Residents in Hawaii paid 33 cents per kilowatt hour, 3.3 times more expensive than Louisiana. So,
Ouch.
it makes a lot of sense that consumers in some states see little point in buying EVs. As you're trying to decide whether the new car is really worth the price, you spot a Toyota dealership across the street. Maybe you should compare prices with the mostly gas-powered vehicles there instead. So when the salesman gets called into his office by a coworker, you sneak out to see what's happening over at Toyota. The prices do seem more reasonable here, but you look around and notice something else. There is not a lot.
That salesman definitely put out an Amber Alert. He's trying to close a deal and she disappeared. That guy is sweating.
People in the showroom. In fact, it's mostly just salesmen standing around
Amber Alert.
looking bored. That's exactly like the scene you left behind in the EV dealership across the street. Perhaps it's not just EV cars on the decline. Why does it seem like no one is buying cars in general? In 2 words, interest rates. During the COVID pandemic, inflation swept across the world due to a number of factors. One was the government spending needed to keep people afloat, as many lost their jobs or customer base and needed assistance. There were also programs to help those whose lives got upended or who got incredibly ill during the pandemic. And the second factor was there were also programs to help those whose lives got upended or who got incredibly ill during the pandemic. The second important factor was supply chain disruptions that caused supply of almost everything to go down. Higher demand due to extra money in the economy, coupled with lower supply, led to inflation. Traditionally, to combat inflation, central banks increase interest rates to make borrowing and therefore some purchasing harder. Inflation is the result of an overheated economy. Slowing down economic activity a little is usually what gets it under control. Unfortunately, higher interest rates hit some businesses, like the auto industry, really hard. Most people buy cars with installments paid over several months. Higher interest rates meant that car consumers need to pay more for each installment. So they couldn't afford as expensive a car as they would have liked to have been able to before interest rates rose. New car sales slumped from 74.9 million in 2019 to 63.8 million in 2020. Even as lockdowns eased up and people got back to the road, high interest rates kept recovery slow. Sales just barely passed pre-COVID levels in 2023, with 75.3 million vehicles sold.
Well, also, I don't know how big of a factor this is, but a lot of people did not return to work. There were a lot of jobs that were phased out. A lot of customer service jobs, a lot of office positions. They just completely pivoted into either work from home or they just automated their position with AI.
And the rebound is still slow going. While all car manufacturers are affected by the new rates, EV makers were the most affected, thanks to their already higher prices. This wasn't helped by the fact that EV manufacturers disproportionately make luxury models. In the first quarter of 2024, nearly 266,000 EVs were sold in the US. 72% of those had either luxury or premium trims. That also makes EVs in general unappealing to the working and middle class. Back to the car dealership. Toyota was a bust, so you're back in the EV showroom and you're waiting for the salesman to reappear. As you're waiting, you look up at the news and you see that a Tesla fire has created a lane closure on a nearby highway. The reporter goes on to say that there's a recall for Tesla Cybertrucks because the cover on the accelerator pedal was slipping off and getting stuck in the...
But did you guys see the frame of the Cybertruck? It withstood that freaking bombing so well.
Interior trim. This led to the truck
W Tesla Cybertruck frame. W patriarchy.
accelerating dangerously with no easy way to stop it. Something it seems Tesla should have looked into before selling their cars. Now you are really rethinking buying an EV. Tesla is by far the most recognizable EV brand, one of the first companies to make electric cars in the first place. If they're having problems, maybe EV companies in general aren't doing so well. Besides, you've got a long commute, which means your car needs to have a long range, and isn't that always a problem with electric vehicles? Not to mention, the whole catching fire thing is slightly concerning. You know what? You just realize this is way too much trouble, and you just don't care to deal with it. You walk out of the showroom and decide to stick with your old car for another year. The misinformation about electric vehicles, coupled with some misinformation when they were first introduced, has made them unappealing for a lot of consumers, and their politicization has now made them even more unappealing. Yeah.
Whoa, shawty looking fine. Oh, there's a few of her. At least they know that's not the unique look.
Yes, in our current times, even whether or not you buy an electric vehicle has become a politicized decision, but we'll get to that soon. First up, the repeated misinformation. Former Top Gear host Jeremy Clarkson once wrote an article titled, "Electric Vehicles Can Explode. Petrol ones only do it in movies." He listed a lot of the issues he believed EVs have. Number one being that they are dangerous. Reports of Teslas catching fire on highways across the US have also supported the idea that electric vehicles are not safe to drive, turning potential buyers off. But is that really the case? Norway, a big adopter of EVs, 26% of the country's cars are now fully electric, released data on engine fires. It showed gas-powered vehicles in the country caught fire 5 or 6 times more frequently than EVs. The National Transportation Safety Board in the US backs up this finding with even more data. It found that for every 100,000 EVs sold, 25 were involved in fires. For every 100,000 gas-powered vehicles sold, over 1,500 caught on fire. Hybrid cars fared the worst, with almost 3,500 catching on fire out of every.
Whatever happened to hybrid cars? Hybrid cars, I feel it's like HD DVDs. Remember those before Blu-ray? Both of those are phased out now, but that was freaking funny. HD DVDs came out and they were out for like a month. Blu-ray killed them. Hybrid cars. Oof. Who has a hybrid these days?
100,000. Now, we can all agree that a car catching on fire while you're in it is generally a bad thing. But it seems like your old Toyota Corolla is much more likely to flambe you than a new Tesla. But as electric vehicles dominate the headlines and the nation's attention, media outlets are much more likely to report on EV fires rather than regular old gas-powered car fires. Also, because one brand in particular, Tesla, is in the news a lot now. Which brings us back to the politicization of EVs and how that affects car sales. Green energy has become a highly politicized issue, creating a clear divide. Liberal parties generally tend to support it, whereas conservative parties are more cautious or outright oppose it, favoring traditional fossil fuels instead. One poll in 2024 found that when asked about electric car brands, GOP voters gave them a net 40% unfavorable rating. Democrats gave them a net 15% favorable rating, a 55-point difference, which is absolutely huge. Similarly, in 2024, Pew Research Center found that 70%.
Well, they only have a 15% support rate among Democrats. Interesting.
Of Republicans were not likely to consider purchasing an EV,
or favorability rate, I should say,
as their next car, while 56% of Democrats were considering it. With Elon Musk's foray into politics, Tesla is facing a backlash from many Democrats and international buyers. And since, as of January 2025 at least, Tesla had a 44% market share for U.S. electric vehicles, and this slump in Tesla sales is.
But I find these things so funny. It's so childish how people will just, like, I remember when everyone loved Elon Musk, everyone was getting on board because, you know, he was, I guess, the face of the brand really matters. But I just find it funny how if they found a new Tesla head tomorrow that people were satisfied with, I feel like that would influence the Tesla sales, which is ridiculous. Like, do you want the car or not?
Significant for the market as a whole. Tesla sales have declined a whopping 76% in Germany compared to that same time last year. According to EV outlet Electric, in Europe as a whole, deliveries dropped by 70% in early 2025 compared to the beginning of 2024. Meanwhile, the European Automobile Manufacturers Association, ACEA, reported that Tesla vehicle registrations in the EU fell by 45% from January 2024 to January 2025. The extreme divide in politicization over EVs, particularly the Tesla brand, has made a lot of people more reluctant to consider buying one. That's amplified by anxieties and misconceptions people have about EVs, as people tend to have with any new technology, that makes them less likely to buy one. For example, Recurrent Auto surveyed more than 250 people and found that 76% of potential EV owners worry about the range of their car.
I mean, that's because I get it for intra, like if you're in a city and you're just doing, you know, city commute, city miles, it could be convenient. But people that are doing a lot of long distance, I don't think, I may be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's very convenient for those individuals.
While 59% of actual EV drivers don't have any worries about it at all. In fact, 78% of EV drivers said that their initial range anxiety faded over time as they gained experience and realized.
I just think it's ridiculous to condition people that having to wait 30-40 minutes for your car to refuel is something normal. Like the whole culture of watching movies while your car charges was actually gaining steam. I saw a couple years ago. I couldn't believe it. You know, years ago, no one would go for that. It takes like 2 minutes to fill up a car with gas.
it wasn't really an issue. So why do anxieties and misconceptions about the range of EV cars persist? Possibly because when the very first models were introduced to markets, they did have a very limited range. According to International Energy Agency reports, the average range of electric vehicles in 2010 was just under 80 miles. In 2021, the average range had gone up to 220. It almost tripled in just over a decade. Today, models like the Tesla S have a range of 320 miles, while the EV Chevy Silverado reaches up to 400 miles, rivaling most gas-powered vehicles. Considering the average American drives only 37 miles a day, modern EV models are more than capable of handling daily commutes and even road trips. After all, 320 miles covers the entire width of Nevada. But first impressions stick, and for many potential buyers, EVs still have a reputation problem. Until more people experience driving EVs firsthand and they realize that the fears don't match reality, consumer hesitation will continue, slowing EV growth. Many of the early adopters who were eager to switch have already bought one, leaving a market that is harder to convince. Which brings us to one more optimistic
And a market that doesn't have money for it. I don't think the creator of this video is acknowledging that. Well, they did touch on it earlier. Shout out to this channel, Infographics. Real reason nobody wants to buy electric cars. But most people just can't afford them. That's the reality. You know, there's a high high entry price, right? Once you get it, it's great. You'll save hundreds and hundreds of dollars on fuel. But who's got the money up front to fork up to get one? That's the thing. So a lot of these people, as they just mentioned, a lot of these people,
are EV cars.
whoa, a lot of these people that could afford it already pivoted into it. They have one or two EVs, and they still have their normal gas powered cars. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. This is funny.
Man, I'm finna whip this home.
There's a little palate cleanse for everyone. America. Shout out to Whistling Diesel. What a legend. One of the first videos I saw from him 4 years ago. Good for him. 10 mil subs. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced. Not convinced. We could check out this news. Motoroids. Audi's big U-turn. Reverses 2026 EV. Only shift. Audi hits the brakes on its all-electric future. ICE models are here to stay. Internal combustion engine. Here to stay. Audi scraps its 2033 ICE exit. They were planning on phasing out, I don't know if all of their internal combustion engines, but they were planning on phasing out either the majority or all of their gas-powered engines by 2033. That's pretty soon. But it appears that they've made an about face, a U-turn. Audi RS6 to offer both plug-in hybrid and fully electric versions. New A5, Q5, Q3, more retained petrol, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the market spoke. Audi, listen, let's face it, EV adoption hasn't gone quite as fast as expected globally. Infrastructure gaps, charging anxiety, and high costs are real concerns for buyers. This is exactly what they just discussed. Audi plans to continue producing internal combustion hybrid cars till the 2030s. Roadmap includes the next-gen A5, Q5, and Q3, all featuring internal combustion engines with options for hybrid powertrains. And for those wondering, no, Audi is not launching a VWID two-size EV alternative for the A3. The A3, do they still have A3s? I thought they were phased out. Oh yeah, they have those four-door cars with a small trunk. RS6, so they're releasing an EV for the RS6. Yeah, not a huge adoption, folks. Not a huge adoption. You see here, customers pull the plug on Mercedes EV sales. EQs plummet. EQS, the Mercedes EQS plummets 52%. That's huge. These car companies, they cannot afford these types of dips. These are huge dips. Governments were telling them they're going to back it. There's just no money. Shocking news. Mercedes buyers don't want anonymous electric jelly beans. I think this car is hideous personally. You know, it is a beautiful vehicle inside. I've seen inside of one, right? But that car, honestly, despite it being extremely luxurious and beautiful inside and, you know, exterior, it has a lot of technology, but it's just, I don't know. Just doesn't seem like a Benz. And Mercedes buyers, loyal Mercedes customers, kind of agree. Mercedes had a mixed year in the United States, but sales climbed 9% in 2024. Crossovers led the way. G-Class sales exceeded 10,000 units. G-Classes are extremely popular nowadays. I remember when people never knew what it was. You would never see G-Wagons. Now they're like in songs. EV sales plummeted with EQB, EQE. I've never even heard of these. EQS I've heard of. Sale figures continue to trickle, and the latest come from Mercedes-Benz. They paint an interesting picture that shows a preference for gas-powered performance. Yeah, because going long range, the performance is not comparable. Acceleration, we know EVs are definitely leading there, but while that's good news, Mercedes bet big. Sales were down 36%. This is for the EVs as they're discussing here. EQE fell 39%. EQS, which is their most popular model, I would say, sales plummeted 52%. They sold 6,900 units. Because it's a very specific client. You may have like these extremely liberal customers that are kind of rolling out of Tesla because Elon Musk is just going off as he does. Ça marche pas. Ça marche pas. It's not working. Tesla faces surprising challenge in latest market report, and it could signify a deeper unraveling. In the UK, new Tesla registrations dropped 62%. That is crazy year over year. That is, as a car, especially now we were talking about Mercedes. Mercedes is an established car company. But for Tesla, this is a growing car company. This is devastating. This is really bad for Tesla. Tesla's reign as the world's most talked about electric vehicle may be hitting a speed bump. The company is facing troubling demand drops across several key markets, according to new data pulled from regional vehicle registration reports. Long story short, sales aren't just slowing. In some places, they're plummeting. That could mean fewer people getting access to cleaner transportation options. So, yeah, this article is clearly a bit biased because they're, cleaner transportation options. They're kind of pleading with you. The planet needs it. Tesla global deliveries for Q1 2025 totaled 336,000, down 13% from the same time last year. This is devastating all around. Devastating all around. And I think a lot of people also are learning more about them. Almost everyone either has an EV or knows someone that has purchased one, so they have a lot of feedback there. It's just not shiny and new anymore. And a lot of people are kind of figuring out where this stuff comes from, like the lithium mines, the cobalt extraction in Africa. Like if you go over here, how modern day slavery in the Congo powers the rechargeable battery economy. This is 2 years ago. Smartphones, computers, electric vehicles, emblems of the modern world, but Siddharakara says the rechargeable batteries are frequently powered by cobalt mined by workers laboring in slave-like conditions in Congo. So this is a nightmare because their primary base are liberal supporters, people that are usually against injustices around the world. So with the whole Elon Musk debacle, right? Controversy, and now people are learning more about where these components are coming from. Is it ethical to drive an EV? I understand, the argument for the planet, but at what cost? Kara acknowledges the important role cobalt plays in the tech devices and the transition to sustainable energy sources. Rather than recounting cobalt entirely, he says people should focus on fixing the supply chain. So the supply chain is broken. It's just I wasn't sharing the right tab. But yeah, the supply chain is broken. And Yeah, people are figuring this out here, and they're just not into it. Might as well drive a gas-powered car, you know? These are the conditions of these cobalt ones. Some 20,000 people work at the Shabara artisanal mine in the Democratic Republic of Congo in shifts of 5,000 people at a time. The DRC produces approximately 74% of the world's cobalt in 2021. That's wild. So without Congo, and Congo is in some extreme they're at war now, I believe, no? Like Congo is not doing well in terms of government stability. And only 24% of the world's cobalt, which is a major component needed for these EVs, only 26% of it is coming from out of Congo. That's astonishing. On how artisanal cobalt mines continue to operate in the DRC despite being illegal. Technically, under the law, there should not be artisanal mining taking place in any industrial mine, and yet, lo and behold, at most of the industrial mines, there's some artisanal mining taking place. Artisanal mining is a term they always use. I don't know, some kind of a blanket that they can use that term to not say what it really is. In some cases, predominantly artisanal mining is taking place, and the reason it's penny wage is to boost production. I mean, imagine you're part of the world where you're millions of people who barely get a dollar or two a day and are grindingly poor. They'll accept almost any labor agreement just to survive. So these are the conditions people extracting the cobalt to build these EV batteries. Why are the conditions on par with slavery? Imagine an entire population of people who cannot survive without scrounging in hazardous conditions for a dollar a day, a dollar or two a day. There's no alternative there. The mines have taken over everything. So a lot of these regions, you can't like. There's no job at Starbucks. There's no job at McDonald's. It's like you work the mine or you starve to death. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced because their villages were just bulldozed in order to make place for large mining concessions. So you have people with no alternative, no other source of income, no livelihood. Now add to that the menace in many cases of armed forces pressuring people to dig. So that is disavow. I'm not saying you know, we know what's going on. Parents having to make a painful decision. Do I send my child to school or do we eat today? Yeah, it's unbelievable. Danger of collapse. Yeah, there's no OSHA out there. So these people, they're just digging under extremely dangerous conditions. There are probably 10,000 to 15,000 tunnels dug by hand by artisanal miners. None of them have supports. That's crazy. Ventilation shafts, rock bolts. Not sure what those are. These tunnels collapse all the time, burying people alive. Anyone who's down there, including children. It's a demise that is impossibly horrific to imagine. And yet, I met mothers pounding their chests in grief, talking about how their children who had been buried alive in the tunnel collapsed. And these stories never get out of the Congo. People just don't know what's happening down there. That's wild. So there's a lot of controversy. I think in the next like 20, 30 years, you're going to see movies come out about this. It's going to be like Blood Diamond, everyone was so, like the diamond market was really taking off and flying. And then that whole Blood Diamond, I guess, documentary or movie or whatever came out. And then, you saw the huge, pickup in these lab grown diamonds, these ethically sourced diamonds. People were a lot more conscious of that. So, hey, well, there you go. That's the EV situation. So you can rewind if you missed the live, rewind, check this out. See why EVs are not being adopted anymore. See why they're being ditched by governments, all kinds of people all over the world. Shout out to MRB Sunny. What's going on over on Twitch? How are you? Thank you very much for the support. Yeah, so there you go. EVs, not stonks.